Welcome back, guys. So today in this video, I'm actually posing a question to you guys, but I'm gonna answer it first. I'm gonna get the ball rolling first. I've been pondering, I've been thinking on this for the past week. What if I was forced to pick one console, one gaming system from the beginning of gaming to current generation, anywhere from Atari 2600, the ZX Spectrum, ColecoVision, Intellivision, NES, Sega Master System, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, Xbox, anything from the beginning to now. What if I was forced to pick one system and 5 officially released games for that system for the rest of my life? And that's all I ever had access to. How would I answer that question? Where would I start? Where would I go? This has baffled me and boggled my mind for the past week. It sounds very simple, but if you sit down and you take this question serious and you really think about it, it's a tough one. Seriously, only 5 games? Oh my God. My list has changed so much over the past few days, but I finally settled on one that I think I'm happy with. And I really can't wait to see what your guys' response is. So like I said, I'm gonna get the ball rolling first. What system do I choose? Oh man, that was a tough one, but I'm gonna go ahead and choose the Super Nintendo. Why the Super Nintendo though? You know, I started out with the Atari 2600 and moved up to the NES, so on and so forth, up to current generation stuff. But the Super Nintendo just has a special place in my heart. Like, there were just so many awesome games that hold up to this day. When we go back, if we look at Atari 2600 or any of the older systems, there's a lot of games that hold up, but for me, a lot of them don't. Even if you go back to the NES had a lot of great games, but there's a lot of them that just don't hold up for me now. Maybe it's because of simplicity, the graphics, gameplay, I don't know. That nostalgia just kind of blurred things, and you know, replaying some of these games, like, nah, they weren't that great. But the Super Nintendo, every game that I remembered being great is still great to this day. There's no disputing that. Even still, like I said, 2600, NES, all those systems, there are games that still hold up to this day, but there's a lot of them, for me personally, that don't. So yes, I'm picking the Super Nintendo Entertainment System for my pick of a system that I would have to live the rest of my life with. You know, before we continue, the reason I was thinking of this is I'm not a crazy collector. I don't collect every single thing that I find. I do have a good amount of games, but I was thinking, like, man, if I really wanted to focus, because I only buy the games I want to play. Sometimes I get more, you know, in lots and stuff like that. And I'll either resell or trade them for stuff I'm looking for, but I tend to not just buy everything out there. I'm not trying to complete any kind of collection here. So that's why this was dwelling on me. If, you know, we only live a short amount of time, we can't, even all the games that I have behind me, which I still have a ton more upstairs in my house, I don't have the time to play every single one of them. So what if it boiled down to, you know what, I just have to pick the ones that I really want to keep and just get rid of the rest and stop, you know, stop all this, just narrow it down. If I were forced to do that, what would the games that I need to keep? And I wanted to start by thinking of what's the system that means the most to me, that I would pick if it was the only system. So that's kind of where this conversation and this thought process came from. If I had to dwindle down my collection, where would it start and what games would it be? So that's a little backstory on this. So moving forward, the 5 games, and oh my God, was this tough. Like I said, I've changed this list multiple times. There's a couple games that stayed on that list. There's a couple games that kept swapping in and out. And I think I finally broke down and decided on my 5 picks. If I were to have to live the rest of my life, one system, 5 games. So I'm gonna get the cheat one out of the way because I do consider this a cheat game. But the criteria, when you're thinking about this, when you post your comment down below, because I do want to hear what everybody's got to say, and I will be doing a follow-up on this video. The criteria for the games has to have been released officially, an official released game, not a hacked game, not a multi-cart game that came out of China. If it was officially released and sold, either in stores or through the company's own, e-shop, web shop, whatever, if it's a more current gen system, that's where it is. Officially licensed, officially released games. So my first pick is a cheat, in a sense, because I'm getting a bunch of games in one. For the Super Nintendo, that would be Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World. Like I said, maybe a little cheating. I wanted to get that one out of the way. But you're getting a bunch of awesome games, and it was officially released as a single cartridge. You got Mario 1, Mario Lost Levels, Mario 2, Mario 3, Super Mario World. You can't go wrong. Super Mario World's one of my all-time favorite Mario games. I still love Mario 1, Mario 2, and Mario 3. Never really gave Lost Levels too big of a chance, but damn, I'd be willing to play it and try to master it. A lot of people have dedicated their lives, and years of their lives at least, mastering these games. And I've never mastered a single one of them, but I do feel I'm pretty good at them, and they are games that I play throughout the year, every single year that these games have came out. So a little bit of a cheat. I'm getting a bunch of games in one, but hey, it was an officially released game, and I think it's pretty sweet. My thought process with this list was longevity. And you could argue, each one of these Mario games doesn't have a lot of longevity to it. Super Mario World, there's a lot of secrets, just like Mario 3, there's a lot of secrets and stuff like that. So I just look at the replayability, and that I just love these games. They're just simply amazing games, and I could see going back and playing them here and there. They might not be ones that I would just dedicate sitting to playing for weeks on end. That's what the rest of this list is for. This is one where it's like, let me get a little variety here and there. But that's what I kind of base my list on, is longevity, replayability. Am I going to be able to enjoy these games over and over again? So that's what I kind of thought about. Now, my next one, and this list is not necessarily in order of favorites, but the next one on my list, this one might be a little surprising to you guys. Populous. Oh my God, Populous. So Populous is kind of looked at as one of the first God games, where you're kind of, not an actual character in the game, but you are manipulating the game itself. You're manipulating the surroundings. You're manipulating the AI. You're essentially a god in this world. Populous was a game that I sat down and played for hours on end. It's a game I cherish to this day, and there's so much complexity to it. But at the same time, it can seem fairly simple, but in other aspects, it can seem rather just tricky, and there's a lot to it. And it's kind of weird to say that. There's a simplicity to it, but there's also it's complex at the same time. You can just set the game up to play itself and just sit there and watch, but that's fun too occasionally. But ultimately, it is pretty awesome to play the good guys versus the bad guys. You build up the kingdom, or you're really not building up the kingdom, you're helping them by terraforming and causing natural disasters and just all sorts of craziness. Tons of levels, infinite possibilities with this game. It's simply amazing. I love it. I cherish it. It's one of those games that I've loved over the years, and I could definitely see that being one of my top picks. Man, so like I said, that one might be a little surprising to some. The next one on my list is going to be another one that's kind of, you're not in control of necessarily a character, but you're in control of a world, or a city that is, and that would be SimCity. My God, SimCity for the Super Nintendo was just so much dang fun. It was Nintendo-fied. It was all Nintendo stuff, and you had Bowser going through destroying the city, and it was one of those games you could either pick a scenario and play through the scenario. You could just create a new city, have a newly generated city, and just build it up and just put in a lot of time. And to me, that was kind of fun. I've always liked those kind of sim games, SimCity, Sim Earth, even going forward like Roller Coaster Tycoon, stuff like that. I always really dug and spent a lot of time playing. But SimCity for the Super Nintendo, I remember just back in the day, I walked like miles. It had to have been like 5 freaking miles, because that's what we did as kids. We just walked everywhere. Nobody was watching us, we just walked. But I remember walking to this Walmart that was like, man, like 3 or 4 cities away from where I lived, and going in there, and they had SimCity for the Super Nintendo, and I was saving up my money. Don't ask me why it had to be this specific Walmart, but it was. And I was saving up my money, and I went there. Now I remember why, because there was a gaming store before there, not a video game store, but like a pen and paper, or pencil and paper, you know, Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons type store, like a hobby store, right? And I remember there was one before this Walmart, and I wanted to go there, so who cares about all that, right? So go to this Walmart, pick up SimCity, was saving my money, my lunch monies, my can monies, whatever money I got, and just dug this game. It was one of the only games when I was a youngster that I actually, at that time, I mean, I bought a few games myself, but it was one of them that I really remember I saved up and I focused on, and I bought this game with my own money, in a sense, you know, really lunch money. Is it really your money? But SimCity, just so much damn fun. It has to be on my list. I know I would spend hours and hours and hours playing it. Man, SimCity, for sure. Next one on my list, this one, those of you who have followed me could be like, well, I know you've said this other game is your favorite in the series. You've said this one was like your second favorite, and there's a reason for it. But my next pick is gonna be Final Fantasy III for the Super Nintendo. Now, I know I have said Final Fantasy II, or, you know, actually 4, when it was renamed in the US, has been a favorite of mine and my top favorite Final Fantasy game of all time. And it's really because of, you know, the nostalgia behind it, the friend that I had at the time that we were playing this game together, just kind of really holds a spot in my heart for that specific reason. Not necessarily because it's the best game in the series, but I just have so many memories of playing this game with a friend and his family, and getting the game myself and playing it myself. There's a lot of stuff with that. But Final Fantasy III was another game that I saved my money up for. Bought the strategy guide, bought the game the day it came out, and just went home and played the crap out of this game. I passed up on dinners, on sleep, on pretending to be sick to stay home from school, all that kind of stuff to play Final Fantasy III. My first playthrough, I think I spent close to 100 hours playing this dang game. That is why I put this on my list, is because there's so much variety. The music is beautiful, the game is beautiful, the characters you have, you know, feelings for. Every character in Final Fantasy III has a story, has a reason for being involved in that main story. And just the development of those characters, it makes you really feel for them and care about them. And I've never played a role-playing game since that gave me the same kind of feels as that. Close, but not quite. So 3 definitely has to be on the list, because there's just so much you can do, different ways of playing it. It's just such an awesome role-playing game. It had to be. That was the one that was just automatically on my list. I fought with myself to put Final Fantasy II along with it. But once you look at Final Fantasy III, I know I can sit there in one playthrough, you know, from the first hour of the game to 60 hours to 100 hours, I could enjoy it for that amount of time. Final Fantasy II, I could breeze through the game in 10 hours or so. So that's one of the things, longevity, replayability. Final Fantasy II is fairly straightforward. Final Fantasy III has so much you could do. Final Fantasy II has a lot as well, but nothing like Final Fantasy III. So let's move on to my last pick. And this one may be surprising to some, like a couple of these on my list, but my final pick is going to be Evo, The Search for Eden. This game just blew me away back in the day. It felt like I was the only person who knew about or cared about this game. I had it around the time that it came out, and it was just such a weird little quirky game. No one was talking about it, nobody else was playing it except for me. At least that's the way it felt. It's gained a cult following since then, and it goes for a pretty penny as well, just kind of crazy ridiculous. But I really loved this game back in the day. I played through it so many times, and it's one of those games where there's tons of different ways of playing it, different approaches, different things you can do, different paths, all that kind of stuff. And it's one that has always held my interest, and I play it all the dang time. Every year I'm playing through this game at least a couple times. And it's one of those ones that it kind of mishmashes a bunch of different genres into one. And when you see this game in action, a lot of people are like, that doesn't look all that interesting. You know, you start out as a fish and you're biting on other fish and eating meat, and not a whole lot going on in the beginning of the game, just being honest. It's one of those ones, if you don't give it at least, I want to say, a half hour to an hour, if that first half hour to an hour just bores you, you're going to stop playing and not see what the rest of this game has to offer. And it's a shame, because it's a really good game. You know, starting out as a fish, a lot of people are just put off. It seems boring, but you progress through the story, and really the game takes place between like 1 billion years of time. And you have this animal, this fish, and you're evolving and changing its body parts and turning it into different creatures and just upgrading components of it to where you can come up with all sorts of crazy different creations, I guess, and just play through the game that way. There's, I believe, a couple different endings to the game. Just so much to it. It's got those role-playing elements, side-scrolling action, platforming elements. It's one of those unique games that if you've never played it, it's definitely worth giving a shot. It's one of them I really love, and I couldn't let go of this one. This one had to be on my list. It's one of my all-time favorite Super Nintendo games, and that's not necessarily what this list comprised of. If I really went back and looked and said, hey, okay, let me just pick my top 5 favorite Super Nintendo games, that might work. And that might work for a lot of people who are thinking in these terms or following along with what I did here. But ultimately, in the end, I had to look at, am I going to play this game over and over again? Can I master this game in different ways? Is this going to hold my attention over the years, cycling through these games? And I felt like the selection that I chose was a good variety, that I wouldn't stay bored. I could swap around doing different things, because ultimately my favorite Super Nintendo games are mostly all role-playing games. Now, definitely with role-playing games, you're going to get a lot of time and value and you know, playability out of them. But I kind of wanted to mix it up a little bit, which was part of the reason of having the Super Mario collection on there. You know, you get a bunch of different games to play. Simple games, easy, not very long, but it's still cool to mix things up. Final Fantasy III, such an awesome game. Tons of time you can put into it, different things you can do. You know, beefing up your characters, unlocking everything, spending all that time in the Coliseum, those kind of things. And just each game on this list, there's a specific reason, you know, mostly longevity. Populous, SimCity, I could sit there for hours on end playing those games. So that's why my list was the way I picked it. It was tough because I wanted Legend of Zelda on there. I wanted Super Metroid on there. I wanted Final Fantasy II on there. Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, Breath of Fire 2. I wanted all those games on this list, but I said, you know what? Let's narrow it down to 5. 5 only. Pick the ones that I know I'm going to play over and over again. I'm going to spend the most time with. So that's the challenge for you guys. I want to hear what your selection would be. Which console would you pick? What 5 officially released games would you pick? Any system, any games. I'm really curious to hear what you guys had to say. This one, man, it drained me coming up with this list, and not everybody's going to agree with my list, but that's the whole point. This is all subjective. What would you spend the rest of your life with as far as games go? This is my list. Would it change? It could possibly change tomorrow. Who knows? But it took me a week to just really think about this and settle on this list of 5 games. I'm hoping to go into the future doing some more videos like this. Maybe saying, hey, instead of consoles and everything, what handheld would I pick and what 5 games? That kind of thing. Or what would, if the Super Nintendo, my top pick, if that was out of it, what would be my next pick? Or just go into each system. Not necessarily like these hidden gems or top 5 lists, but if I were to only have 5 games, for example, the PlayStation 1, what would they be? If I could only have 5 games for the system, and that's it for the rest of my life, what would they be? Same thing, Sega Genesis, 5 games, what would they be? So I'm hoping to possibly continue this series with that train of thought. Pick 5, and that's it. So I really do appreciate you guys stopping in. Hope you guys get involved. Drop those comments down below, your thoughts. In my next video on this type of subject matter, you know, if I say like we move on to the PlayStation or something else or handhelds, I'm going to take a look and comment on some of your guys' comments in the next video. So hey, get creative, put some thought into it, throw it out there, and maybe I'll include you in the next video and kind of talk about your picks. So thank you guys, appreciate you stopping in. Smash that like button, hit that notification bell as well. You gotta select how often you want to be notified of my videos when they drop. If you don't hit that notification bell, YouTube just throws it up in the air like confetti, and maybe it'll fall on you, maybe it won't. So hey, if you like this channel, you like what I do, and I do appreciate all you guys coming in here, hit that notification bell, subscribe, do all that cool stuff, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace out. Bye-bye.